Everyone knows there's a lot of similarities between Star Wars Episode 4 and 7, but it's much more than that. There are remakes with more differences than these two movies. They're basically the same movie, and this video is going to walk through the joint plot of Star Wars The Hope Awakens, or maybe Star Wars A New Force. Spoilers, obviously, for these two films, but also a few references to the other movies in the franchises. This film takes place a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. An oppressive government has control of this sector of space. The government is led by a decrepit old man that is extremely powerful on the dark side of the Force. The Force is essentially a rare type of magic. The dictator's presence in the film is primarily felt through the deployment of his top henchman. The henchman wears all black and has a mask that distorts his voice. He used to be a Jedi Knight, a good Force user. Prior to the events of this film, he murdered all the Jedi cadets. That was a pivotal moment in his conversion to the dark side of the Force. He instills fear in not just his enemies, but also his underlings. He's known for reacting violently to receiving bad news. Working with the henchman is a high-ranking military officer that appears to actually outrank the henchman, even though the exact military hierarchy is unclear. At the start of the film, the henchman leads an attack on a suspected cell of freedom fighters. The government soldiers, called stormtroopers, wear all white armor, including helmets that cover their face. The henchman was correct. It was indeed a freedom fighter cell. They were there to make contact with a mysterious elderly man, but the attack disrupted that plan. One of the freedom fighters was able to sneak information away in a small droid before being captured. Later in the film, that freedom fighter will escape thanks to an individual dressed as a stormtrooper with no intention of following government orders. Right now, the film follows the information droid as it wanders by itself through the desert. Alien scrappers find the droid before it ends up with our main protagonist. The main protagonist is a kid about to have their coming-of-age story. They live on this desert backwater planet and would ideally like to leave to seek better opportunities, but family reasons keep them tied to this planet. This kid is extremely powerful in the Force, but doesn't yet know it. They don't even know what the Force is at the start of the movie. We find out in a future movie that the reason the protagonist is so strong in the Force is because they are a descendant of a very powerful, yet evil Force user. This droid is the catalyst to get the kid to leave their home planet, explore the greater galaxy, learn about the Force, and get involved in the galactic fight to take down this oppressive government. The information held inside this droid is vital to help the freedom fighters defeat the oppressive government. The kid, the information droid, and a third get help from an older gentleman that was the main character in the chronologically earlier trilogy. He is the one to first tell the kid about the Force, although he will not be the one to train the kid. Training the kid will happen in a later film with a different character from that chronologically earlier trilogy. The older man takes them to a sketchy alien bar where they seek help. There is some violence at the bar, but they leave knowing where to go next. I haven't mentioned it yet, but traveling with them is a young guy with questionable loyalty. This guy actually used to be a soldier for the oppressive government. During the movie, he ditches the protagonist. He rationalizes that it's not his fight. He tries to get the protagonist to come with him, but the kid stays loyal to the cause. However, this young guy comes back to help his friends when they are in dire need. Also in this movie is Chewie, a tall, furry alien of a species called Wookiee. He has a life bond to Han because Han saved his life a long time ago. I've actually already mentioned Han, but I may have missed mentioning his name. Han Solo is a smuggler that gets into trouble over a debt he owes almost immediately after being introduced in this film. He pilots the Millennium Falcon spaceship. So anyways, after the bar scene, they rescue the female lead. She's being held prisoner on the base of a massive superweapon. The henchman has been interrogating her, and it's not really apparent in this film, but in a later film it's shown that she has a special connection with this evil henchman. I do want to stress that this character is not a stereotypical damsel in distress. She picks up a weapon and takes over her own rescue mission. The rescue mission is successful, but they did lose a member of their team. The older gentleman faces off with the evil henchman. The older gentleman, turns out, helped raise the evil henchman back before he turned evil, and thus when they faced off, the older gentleman let himself be killed. This was witnessed by the kid, who was shaken because they had come to view the older gentleman as a mentor. You'd think this would lead to a lifelong hatred of the evil henchman, but instead, it's actually this kid who in a later film brings the henchman back to the light side of the Force. The climactic battle of this film is to take down the government's new superweapon. It is capable of destruction levels that were previously unimaginable. If allowed to keep this weapon, the oppressive government will be unstoppable. Additionally, time is of the essence, as the oppressive government has learned the location of the freedom fighters' base. If the weapon is allowed to fire, it will take out the base and everything around it, including the entire planet. There is a quick strategy meeting at the freedom fighter base. Leia Organa and other leaders of the freedom fighters identify a weak point in the superweapon that, if successfully hit, could cause the entire station to blow up. They launch a couple squadron of X-Wings that are met by the enemy's TIE fighters, which look like a flying H. It's a tough and intense battle. With most of their X-Wing fighters destroyed, it looks like the freedom fighters will fail, but they just barely prevail in the end, thanks to the Force. The Empire suffered a major defeat, but they haven't lost the war yet. The freedom fighters will have a tough battle ahead of them in the next film.